Welcome back, dear students. Let's continue with microbial interactions. And this session, we will be talking about the type of parasites. As we mentioned earlier, we have two different types of parasites, the ectoparasites as well as the endoparasites. The ectoparasites, they remain external to the host, whereas the endoparasites, they live inside of the body of the host. And we have different examples of the ecto as well as the endoparasites. Now, if you go to consider the parasites, apart from the ectoparasites as well as the endoparasites, there are also various other parasites present, and we are discussing about them today. Now, among the ectoparasites, we saw that when a parasite lives on the surface of the host body, it is called an ectoparasite. Now, the most common example which we come across is the head lice as well as the itch mites, which occur on humans, as well as in you can see ticks which can occur on dogs as well as various other copepods on marine fishes, and you can see sometimes ticks associated with various cattle as well as monkeys and all that attached to their external surface. These are all examples of ectoparasites where the parasite which gains either nutrition or a space for its living on the host is living on the surface of the host body. That is referred to as a ectoparasite. In another case, as we know, the parasite can live inside the body of the host. That is referred to as a endoparasite. And the malarial parasite, Plasmodium vivax, can occur in the body of humans. That is either in the liver cells as well as in the erythrocytes or the red blood cells of man. The malarial parasite will multiply and continue its stage of its life cycle. So, in that case, the parasite is entering inside the body of the host and it is surviving within the body. So, it is referred to as an endoparasite. Another example is Wuchereria bancrofti or the filarial worm. That is another example of an endoparasite. And you can also have roundworms such as the Ascaris lumbricoides, which also can survive in the case of humans. In addition to this, the categorization of ectoparasite and endoparasite, you have another type of classification called the hyperparasite. Now, what is a hyperparasite? A hyperparasite is a parasite which will live on the body of another parasite. That is, you will normally have a parasite and on the body of another parasite, a second parasite is surviving. If you go to look into the case of Nosema notabilis, it is a parasite which is living in Spherospora polyforma, which is another parasite living in the urinary bladder of the toadfish. So, if you go to look here, Spherospora polyforma is a parasite which is living in the urinary bladder of toadfish, and there's another parasite which is living, that is Nosema, is living as a parasite in Spherospora polyforma. So, when a parasite lives on the body of another parasite, it is referred to as a hyperparasite. Now, you can also classify the parasites on the basis of how many hosts they have in their life cycle. If a parasite will complete its life cycle only in one host, then it is referred to as a monogenetic parasite. That is, it is having only one host in its life cycle. Then it is referred to as a monogenetic parasite. Now, in the case of Entamoeba histolytica, which causes amoebic dysentery, as well as Ascaris lumbricoides, which is a roundworm, these all have only one host in their life cycle, and that is a human host. Okay, and in the case of digenetic parasite, it is a parasite which will require at least two hosts to complete its life cycle. That is, in one host it will carry out probably a sexual mode of life, or sometimes it might carry out a sexual mode in another host. So, if it requires at least two hosts to complete a life cycle, the parasite is referred to as a digenetic parasite. And we have examples of Plasmodium vivax and Wucheria bancrofti as such examples. I'm not going into the details of this because you have a separate paper on parasitology alone, but I'm just giving you an idea on what are the different types of parasites which can occur. And the types of hosts can also be of different types. Sometimes you can have a primary host or a definitive host. That is, it is a host that harbors the adult stage or the sexually mature stage of a parasite, or the host in which the parasite undergoes sexual reproduction is referred to as the primary host. And you can also have sometimes an intermediate host or a secondary host, where the larval or the immature or the asexual stage of a parasite is being carried out. Now, you can also have a reservoir host. It is a host that lodges the infective stages of a parasite in the body when the human host is not available. Now, in the reservoir host, the parasite neither undergoes development or causes any disease. Now, for example, a malarial parasite Plasmodium can occur as a reservoir host in monkey. And Trypanosoma gambiense, which causes trypanosomiasis, was being found in the African antelope as a reservoir. It uses African antelope as a reservoir host. So depending upon the type of the host, you can classify. A primary host is the one in which the sexual stage of the parasite has been completed. In the case of Wucheria bancrofti, man is a definite or host or the primary host. And secondly, we have the intermediate host or the secondary host, where the asexual mode of the parasite is being completed. Now, in the case of man, it is a secondary host or an intermediate host for the malarial parasite. Okay, and the reservoir host, where the infective stages of the parasite is not been present, and but the parasite and will not undergo any development or nor cause any disease in a reservoir host. So it is a host at which it can multiply. Not multiply, it remains as a reservoir. It is not infecting the particular host over in a reservoir host. Now let's talk about the different manifestations of parasites. Now, when a parasite lives on a host, sometimes what happens? A balance is being acquired. That is, if the parasite rapidly multiplies and tries to kill the particular host, the parasite itself will lose the benefit of parasitism because the host will die at a very rapid rate. If the host dies, the parasite also dies. So, always a balance is being favored between the host and the parasite, so that the parasite will not lose its habitat and so that it will not be unable to survive. And if this equilibrium is shifted to favor the parasite, okay, the host will become ill. And depending upon the specific host-parasite relationship, it may die also. So usually a balance is being maintained by the parasite and the host, so that the parasite will get the nutrition or the benefits what it needs from its host, but at the same time the host is not being killed also. Okay, because if if the parasite kills the host, the parasite is also going to die because it will be deprived of its habitat. And sometimes what will happen, the parasite will be favored sometimes. That is, the host will become ill but will not die. And on the other hand, a controlled parasite-host relationship can be maintained for a longer periods of time, and the parasitic nature of the relationship may not be obvious also. So some cases, this parasitic host relationship will be carried out in a controlled manner for a long period of time, so that people will not notice also that such a parasitic relationship is being present or not, or such a relation may not be obvious. Now, what does the mean of obvious? Obvious means something which is clear. So, the parasitic host relationship might sometimes will be maintained in a normal phase for a longer period of time, that people will not recognize it as a parasitic relationship. Now, one such thing, we'll just explore some of that. Now, in the case of typhus, which causes rickettsia, which is caused by Rickettsia typhi, it is harbored in the fleas that live on the rats. Okay. Now, this is transmitted to the humans who are bitten by such fleas. And you can see that humans, they often live in association with the rats, and in such communities, there is always a small number of people with typhus. That is, among the small number of people, the typhus will be found to be endemic. But when the times of war or when the people are forced to become refugees, the lack of sanitation as well as the overcrowding will result in an increased number of rat-human interactions. And in such cases, what happens? The typhus can reach into epidemic proportions. So during the Crimean War, about 2,13,000 men were killed or wounded in a combat, while over 8,50,000 were sickened or killed by typhus. So you can see a equilibrium shift of parasitism was noted in the case of typhus, which has been caused by Rickettsia typhi. So to just notice that the Rickettsia typhi, it normally lives in the fleas in the rats, and the people which are closely associated with these rats happen to get infected with Rickettsia typhi, and they get typhus disease. And this incidence of the disease typhus is more in conditions where there are what? Where there is a lack of sanitation or where there is a overcrowding, and which could result in the more interaction of humans with the rats and thereby also with the typhus. Uh, Rickettsia typhi, which causes typhus. Now, another example which we consider here among parasitism or a controlled parasitism is the case of lichen. Normally, we consider lichen as an association between the specific ascomycetes, that is a fungi, and some green algae or the cyanobacteria. They are also being referred to as symbiotic relationships also, but we can see that in some cases, this is a case of controlled parasitism between the fungi and the phycobiont. Now, what is a phycobiont? That is a cyanobacterial member. And some of the, you can see that some of the cyanobacterial members as well as the algae, they can grow more quickly when they are being cultured alone. So, though a relationship or a symbiotic relationship, as we mentioned it earlier, occurs between the algae as well as the fungi, or the fungi and the cyanobacteria happens in a lichen, you can see that both of them do get some benefits. You can see that the fungus obtains nutrients from its partner by projections of the fungal hyphae called the hosteria, and it also produces oxygen, and but during the process of respiration that has been availed by the phycobiont will give out oxygen also, and the fungus protects the phycobiont from high light intensities, provides water and minerals, and creates a firm substratum within which the phycobiont or the cyanobacterial member can multiply. This all can happen, and this is a type of mutualistic interaction also. But you can see that here it can be explained as a case of controlled parasitism also, because when you separate this fungal partner as well as the cyanobacterial partner from each other, that is, from the cyanobacteria, if you remove the from the fungal partner, if you remove the cyanobacteria or the algae, what happens? The cyanobacteria and the algae can even grow more quickly when they are being cultured alone. So this is indicating that even if the fungi is not there, the cyanobacteria and the algae can multiply rapidly. So this is a case of controlled parasitism when we explain it over here. I guess it is clear to you. And something what we have to talk about is genomic reduction is an aspect. It is an important aspect of many symbiotic relationships, even including parasitism. And you can see that once such a relationship has been established within the host, uh, the the symbiont or the parasite which has been involved in such a relationship will discard excess or the unused genetic information by a process called genomic reduction. And you can see that in the case of aphid endosymbiont, Bachnura aphidicola, it has also occurred within the parasite of Mycobacterium leprae as well as Microsporidium encephalitotum. You can see that when they undergo in such symbiotic relationships, even in parasitism, you can see that when they are being associated with a particular host, all those unnecessary genetic or unused genomic information within their body are being found to be discarded in excess by a process called genomic reduction. This is not only been found in parasitism, but also in certain symbiotic relationships also you can see that the organism will discard the unused genetic information by a process called genomic reduction. And the latter organism, which parasites a wide range of animals, includes humans, now can only survive inside the host cell. So I guess you got an idea of what is parasitism, what are the type of parasitisms, and some examples of parasitisms are also being mentioned here. With this, we come to an end of the session. Thank you for now.